At the heart of Magic the Gathering lies the color pie, comprised of 5 distinct colors, each of which embody their own unique philosophies, which dictate the themes and actions of its characters and factions. And yet, there is so much more that the color pie can do, as when 2 of these colors come together, 10 new and unique concepts are formed. Whether it's the passionate order of red and white, or the cunning partnership of blue and black, the impact of these color pairs are felt across every plane of the vast multiverse. But why, you may ask, should we invest our time in the philosophical exploration of a card game? Well, my friend, by understanding the philosophies behind the colors of Magic, we can gain insights into not just our favorite game, but our own choices, actions, and perspectives as well. That is why I have gone through the extensive work of documenting the philosophies and themes of every color pair. So sit tight, get comfortable, and join me on this journey through the philosophies of all 10 color pairs in Magic the Gathering. Golgari is one of those combinations that has both fascinated and eluded fans of Magic the Gathering for quite some time. What do I mean by this? Well, it's a pairing that seems to tie itself to a single, very specific representation on every plane. But why is this? And is there more here than meets the eye? In this video, I will explain to you what exactly Golgari believes in and why. What you will come to understand is 2 things. Golgari is a combination that has a very unique perspective, and that the way in which we experience this pair throughout Magic does indeed explain something very profound. With that, I want to begin with the core conflict at the heart of Golgari, one that makes its way into almost every green and black card we play, as even their thematic differences can reveal what this pairing truly is. There are 2 inescapable aspects of our existence, and that is birth and death, the growth and decay of all things. We see these themes represented time and time again in the combination of green-black, or Golgari. But why is that? And is there a deeper meaning behind all of it? While these concepts seem superficial, they reveal a deeper perspective which lies at the heart of this enemy pairing. There is no life without death and no growth without rot. One does not exist without the other. This is a case of enemies in theory being part of a single whole. While these themes oppose each other in a fundamental way, they must respect each other and the circle that they play a role within. In this way, black and green can see across the divide into each other's realm. This, in turn, provides a unique perspective to the pair that no other dual combination can mimic. So, what does this mean for Golgari outside of its thematic representations? Well, think of it this way. With this breadth of understanding of life and death, one can know peace when it comes to the inevitability of existence. This is why Golgari has a relationship with both life and death in equal measure, one that is not based in fear, but rather reverence, and why they can find the beauty in both that which decays and in what grows. They understand that in death a new life can be formed, and in that way there is beauty and balance in everything. Think of it like this. A compost heap is repulsive at first sight, with its rot and smells, yet it is brimming with bacterial life. In fact, this death and decay repeated upon itself creates the greatest conditions for life. Not only is there rich microbial life, but it can also be used to grow new existence. Golgari is then a combination who is fascinated with this state in between, or the space in which life decays, or in which decay breeds new life. This is why these themes are ever present, and why things like rot are so common with this combination. With this outlook, there is beauty in such things, or a visceral fascination. Now I want to step away from this more thematic representation of the combination, and now discuss what I believe to be one of the greatest conflicts that this enemy pairing must resolve, and that is autonomy or self-reliance versus destiny, purpose, or that of tradition. For green, I chose the word destiny, but in truth, it could be called purpose as well, in that green believes that each entity upon its world is meant to do and be something. It is that entity's job to then fulfill that role within their life. So, in a way, a person's destiny is set in stone based on their purpose. In some ways, green has a solidified view of time in this way. Destiny speaks to a purpose taking a person into the future, while tradition speaks of purpose handed down from the past. This is something taken straight from nature. With the exception of humans, each animal and plant has a sole purpose, and the removal of it can cause rippling effects felt throughout the world. This is why green is so avid at continuing nature's legacy. In the opposite way, black does not believe it should be shackled by a purpose. Each person should be able to carve their own path and make the most out of their own life. Destiny, one's role, or traditions be damned. In this way, black wants true autonomy, or pure self-reliance, unrestricted by outside forces. But you see, you cannot escape these outside forces. And in the same vein, perhaps our destiny isn't set in stone. This is where Golgari sits. Said from Golgari's perspective, it would be something like this. I am aware that there are forces outside of my control that affect everything within and outside the scope of my life. I am then at peace with this, and will apply change where it is possible for me. And so I should not fight against everything outside of my control, but rather accept what I am and do the most from what I am given, always at peace with what I cannot do. So in this way, Golgari is not shackled by its fate, but rather sees the path laid before its life and understands that it sits at its center. A maggot does not dream to be king, but it will still consume to its heart's content. It accepts what it is while exerting itself where it can. So you see, Golgari once again balances self-interest, or the self in general, with outside forces greater than itself. Sure, its destiny is not set in stone, but it was placed here for some purpose. Or at the very least, it was born into an already established ecosystem that must be respected. Things like tradition then are not so much restrictions, but guidelines passed down of proven paths aimed to help the next generation find their way. It could be said then that Golgari sits in the middle of both life and death, and then of purpose and autonomy. Like most enemy pairs, it is a balancing act, which leads us into another important conflict within this color combination, and that is ambition versus that of harmony and balance. It could be said that nature maintains balance or harmony because it does not take more than it requires for itself. But does this not discount the great achievements of humanity, even though its actions have disrupted this delicate ecosystem? From another angle, it could be said that ambition does poke its head into nature, and it's because of this that evolution does take place. Even though one of Black's greatest traits could be said to fly in the face of Green's core tenets, we can see how grander aspirations can potentially be allowed in nature, as long as it's not in excess. You see, where the enemy colors do not agree is in the extremes of their ideals. Green does not allow for unrestricted ambition, or in other words, the unrestrained taking of resources from it, as this will ultimately disrupt the balance that nature has cultivated over millennia. The interesting thing is that Black disregards balance and harmony completely, just like it rejects most things, as it does not want to be told how it should be when what it wants to be is more important. When these colors come together, black is able to see that its efforts have diminishing returns, in that it cannot continue to take and take without consequences. In this way, a Golgari-aligned person will indeed pursue their ambitions, but will not take without end. It respects the balance for what it is, and for what it provides. For if everything were to be taken from the earth, then nothing would remain for me. On the other side of it, green can see the value in the strong reaching for the highest heights. Perhaps the first creature to step foot on land would not have done so if it did not desire what lied beyond its borders. In this way, Golgari sees that the world is indeed dog eat dog, and in some roundabout way, this does create some form of balance, taking shape in what we call the food chain. This hierarchical structure naturally forms when the strong take what they want, but respect the power that others hold over them. And over ages, this eventually solidifies. In that way, a natural harmony is formed. The key is to understand that everything is finite, and that we must understand that our actions have consequences. From here, I want to discuss a concept within Golgari that I don't see brought up much, but one that has become clear in my mind over the course of writing this script. With such self-important concepts, fighting against those of the grander world and the infinite space beyond, there is naturally a line formed towards a thinker who discusses such ideas. For this, I have titled the next discussion as such: the practical versus that of the listless thinker, or the philosopher. With concepts such as place and purpose so prevalent in Green's mind, it can be a color whose head, figuratively speaking, is usually up in the clouds. These ideas are grand, and the scope of which causes Green to see itself as but a small speck among an infinite universe. This is then directly contrasted by black, a color whom it could be said sees itself as the center of the universe. Naturally then, black is a color who prefers introspection and self-analysis over that of ideas of place within. This, among other traits, is why black is often a color who is atheistic and amoral. This is directly at odds with green, a color who takes on a more wise and holistic outlook, that of scale beyond itself, or a purpose which guides its actions. It could be said with confidence that these concepts are nothing alike, and would lead to a stalemate of ideas. But of course we know that these ideas must come together to form this combination. These conflicting opinions are then transformed into something more agnostic and practical. Once again, it's an understanding that there is indeed forces of great scale beyond our understanding, and that we are indeed a small piece of it. And yet we cannot simply create our own answers from our lack of understanding. In another way, it is the idea that represents the power we ourselves hold, beings whose own bodies and minds are a miracle. In turn, this mixture of concepts, both personal and grand in scale, leads perfectly into someone who is a philosopher, someone who thinks both within and without, and of where the balance lays between its own self-importance and that of our true purpose, our reason for existing. In many ways, it can wrestle with this dichotomy for ages, never truly coming to a satisfying conclusion. Now, this may not be a common version of Golgari, but I believe it is in there still, especially with what we have discussed so far in each of our previous topics. This could also take shape more often when we apply this combination to our own lives and strongly defined characters. Golgari, above many other combinations, is granted a very unique perspective, and in that way I cannot see how this would not be part of it. It all starts with the core, inescapable fact of our existence. Everything grows and everything dies. We are not beyond both concepts, and Golgari understands this, and instead of fighting against either, it accepts both in equal measure. finding that space called rot, the continual death and growth found in nature. These concepts are not inconsequential either. They reflect what is at the heart of this combination. We see this in how Golgari balances its own very personal desires with that of purpose and place, of destiny written not in stone, but rather a living document forged ourselves. Do not discount Golgari's outlook, for it sees the world around it from a perspective not shared by many, that of viewing both the grand scale of the infinite and that of its own very personal experiences of it. I put a thought out to you to test your perspective and to see where you sit among this combination. Where is the line in the sand? Does destiny dictate everything around us? Are there forces out there persuading your every action? Or are we totally alone, free to act how we deem fit, a universe in our own right? If you answer one way or the other, you might indeed take on one of the two colors. But if you stand somewhere in the middle, with a practical and agnostic outlook, you, my friend, might be Golgari. The combination of blue and red, or is it, is one of true inner conflict, a battle of the heart and the mind. It's a combination we often associate with wild magic and science, and yet there is a greater truth at the heart of these colors, one that goes beyond its typical representation in Magic the Gathering. In this video, I will guide you through the core conflicts of these colors, all in an effort to find the space in between their opposing ideologies. That way we can truly understand the pairing of blue and red. I'm confident that after this video is done, you will have a better grasp on the characters we meet and the factions we encounter who fall under this combination. What's more is that you may even see yourself discussed in this set of colors as well. With that said, put on your thinking cap and follow your heart into our first conflict. On a macro level, the conflict that best represents these colors is that of the methodical mind versus that of the impulsive heart. In literal terms, the brain works as a system of switches, one that helps guide us through life using proven paths that we've discovered through trial and error. In abstract terms, the heart is the inner self, the guide that is spontaneous. It pulls us here and there based on impulses and emotions. In this way, blue is the color of one who plans things out, of one who acts in a methodical manner, just as red is the opposite, allowing itself to be swept away by impulse. In this way, the combination of Izzet is one that wrestles with these two guiding forces. The interesting thing is that this conflict is present in every one of us. Some can remove impulse from their life and live a completely rigid lifestyle and thrive in it, while others will follow the winds of their heart, casting aside any structure. What we do know is that for an Izzet personality, both must be present, for we cannot exclude one of the colors. This then tells us that the Izzet personality is one of two things: either a person who fights with both forces constantly, or that of someone who has found a balance. In my mind, a balance can be hard to reach without one more color's influence, and since we're talking about the pairing of Izzet and not that of the Wedge of Jeskai, then I believe that the Izzet character isn't necessarily one who has a perfect grasp on both sides of the argument, but rather someone who struggles with it. They can have a well laid out plan and still see it brought to ruin through their reactions to events, as the pull of the heart can outweigh any methodical process for them, just as the heart may feel stifled when structure trumps that of its desires. Now, this isn't to say that either will always lead to a corruption of the other's values. In fact, the mind of a blue-red person can accept that this is the function they've been dealt. It is then this: no plan can outweigh an impulse that must be followed, and no impulse should lead to total chaos. In this way, an is-it personality is methodical so that it can be impulsive in the refuge of its own design. One is the mechanism to experience life, while the other is the safety net that allows it to do so. As to be carried away by one or the other would lead to a life that felt incomplete in either regard. If we break open the conflicts of our previous discussion, we find two concepts, and those are emotion versus that of logic. What I mean is that impulses are the result of emotion, and logic is the mechanism behind that of the methodical mind. Both logic and emotion are at odds with one another because one is the rejection of the other. You see, blue regards emotion as the folly of man, while red deems logic as the casting off of our true self. In many ways, both are right. And once again, this is a conflict found within us all, one that is all too human. But for us, we often weigh one as more important than the other. It must be stated that neither can be ignored in the case of the is-it aligned person. What is emotion then, when it's combined with that of a logical mind? Can a logical mind find that there is truth in expressing who we are? Well, yes. Through logic, one could surmise that there is truth in emotion. And on the flip side, could it not be said that logic is the refinement of emotion, the taking into account of every aspect of oneself in order to find a satisfying conclusion? To help you visualize this dichotomy, I want to do an exercise. Look to a time when you knew what you should do or say, and yet you could not pull yourself away from where your heart was leading you. Love, in many ways, is the greatest example of this. We know what we should do, and yet we act against our own interests for the sake of our deep-seated emotions. On the other side of it, have you ever convinced yourself not to do something, even though your heart tugged at you to do so, simply because it was not the logical decision? To me, this feeling, this gnawing that is conjured up is it. If you feel this about more things than that of our single example, then perhaps this combination is true to you. In many ways, the combination of red and blue is defined by that empty and anxious feeling. Not empty in a way that is incomplete, but rather a desire that is never satisfied. It is a combination that perhaps struggles with its balance, with one side winning out over the other depending on the situation. There is never a true balance in between, as logic will always be remiss to lose to emotion, just as emotion rejects logic wherever it can. And you know what? That's fine. There doesn't have to be some perfect balance between when we're talking about this combination. Of all the enemy pairs, it can be said that this is the one most comfortable in that turmoil, for neither the heart nor the mind can ever be truly ignored. Now, this inner turmoil leads us directly into our next discussion. An ideology defined by the conflict of heart and mind leads us to a conclusion based on their output, and that is chaos versus perfection. It's no surprise that when red follows through with its beliefs, it's a color who has no true structure to its way of life. Following one's impulses and emotions fully can lead to a chaos of being, and yet red thrives in this very way. The opposite is then said about blue. It is a color who finds purpose through rational and methodical thought, with an eye out for perfection, a concept, it is said, that cannot be found in chaos. And yet, here we are. The interesting thing is that this representation of the combination, that of chaos and perfection, is the one we see most in Magic the Gathering. That of the scientist who plays with chaos to inch closer to discovery, or that of the artist who crafts perfection through expression. There is something to be said about those who can dance between the yin and yang of these ideals. The card Expressive Iteration states this better than I ever could. Prismari students dance in the tension between passion and perfection. You see, it's just that, a constant tension between these two states of being. Yes, perfection is not quite a state in literal terms. Rather, in this context, it relates to a person who looks for the perfect outcome in life, wishing to shed chaos. So in this way, the truth of this combination is a tension of being. And yet through this push and pull, the blue-red person is someone who can thrive, even though there is a gnawing of self. To me, this conflict is a yearning for both sides of the coin. For one, they want to push the boundaries of what they feel comfortable with, to dance in chaos, and yet their eye is always looking for that one discovery that will take them to their ideal self, the perfect vision. There is a playfulness here, one that spits in the face of safety and yet acts with purpose. When red is alone, there is no perfection, just action. And when blue is alone, action can be stifled by the pursuit of perfection. In this way, red frees blue from its shackles, and blue guides red beyond its impulses. It is not a finding of the perfect space between, but rather an addition to each other's ideals that creates something new inside of that chaos. If we take on a wider lens to our discussion on Is It, there is an idea that is touched on but never said, and that is the conflict between the present and the future. Much of the beliefs of blue lead into this idea of creating a better future, acting in a manner that is efficient and yields the best returns based on logical outcomes for itself. What's more is that the idea of perfection is an iterative process which aims to shape that future. The opposite then can be said about red. If one is always following their heart, impulses, and emotions, then one is very much in the present. Red does not look to the future or how its actions affect it, and to red, that is how it should be. So then, where does this leave us with the combination of blue and red? Well, it comes down to this. It's that same gnawing feeling we've discussed before, that of both wanting to enjoy one's life, all while looking to what the future holds. For this idea, I think of the artist who wants to master their craft, but does not want life to pass them by. What I mean is that our life is limited. If we always look to the future, we will miss the present. And if we only look to the present, then the future may be tainted for it. So once again, we see that blue-red is a combination always in flux, with such strong ideas pushing against one another. In no way can either of them truly be satisfied without the degradation of the other. And yet, once again, this is where Is It plays. And I believe play is the perfect word to use. The blue-red person has an ideal self envisioned, one who can both experience life and one who shapes it. This is not to say that they ever get either right, but rather that they may bounce around between the two. They may spend their summers dancing in the moonlight, but then toil away in the winter, in some ways ashamed of the time wasted, but truthfully fuller for it. They master their craft until the call of their heart pulls them away. Then, once their heart is full, they focus on who they want to be, satisfying their vision of the future for themselves. Like I said, the Is It personality is not one to find a perfect balance. Said once more, it is that gnawing feeling, the push and pull of the future versus that of the present. There will be times when one wins over the other, and they hyperfixate on that one thing until it does not feed them anymore, and then they move on. That is why I use the example of the artist, as the artist needs to experience life all while desiring to master a craft. The tragedy is that neither can truly be fulfilled in the short life we are granted, as there can always be something to experience in the present, while there can always be something mastered for the future. As we have learned, Izzet, or the combination of blue and red, is one that dances in extremes of being, a conflict of the heart and mind. When both logic and emotion are present in equal measure, there will be this constant struggle to fill a hole in oneself. A hole that is not bred of emptiness, but rather one that overflows and yet never remains filled. An Izzet personality may experience more than most in their lifetime, and yet will lay on their deathbed wishing they could have done more. There is beauty and yet sadness here. But to those who fall under this combination, they would dare not shed one or the other color, as this turmoil defines them. So if you feel I have revealed your personality here, do not fear the gnawing at your heart. Lean into it, and perhaps even you will find perfection in chaos. Darkness and light, discipline and self-indulgence, humility and ambition. Is it possible to find the place between such fundamentally opposing ways of thought? Well, you see, deep within us all, this exact struggle wages on. It's the little voices on either side of our shoulders, which either beg us to make the selfish or selfless decision. And there is no other color combination in Magic the Gathering where this is felt any stronger than that of white and black, also known as Orzhov. The key to unlocking the philosophies of a given enemy color pair comes down to one thing: finding how those opposing ideals can meet somewhere in the middle. Just because two ways of thinking oppose each other does not mean that they can't meet in that space between. The issue is that this space can be hard to find at first, but with a little creativity and introspection, we can get there. To start, let's discuss the biggest difference between these colors, and that is their take on morality, with one dictating much of its life through a moral code, while the other abandons it completely, opting for a life unfettered by it. This doesn't mean there is no way to bridge this gap. In fact, I would say most of us are doing it already. It's rare to find a person who lives a perfect moral life, as morality changes depending on culture and upbringing. That right there shows us that morality is malleable. On the other side, there is rarely a person who lives with no morals at all. Even a crook will live by a code of conduct to some degree, even if a person like you or I would disagree with it. Without this functional moral code, a criminal organization would crumble under its own weight. So, as we can see, there is inherently a space in between these two sides of morality, and this is where white and black, when combined, are situated. Now, this isn't to say that there is a perfect balance, a point directly in the middle. No, in the case of enemy pairs, it can and often will lean more or less into either side of this debate, but never on one extreme or the other. So in a way, you could say that white-black has a more nuanced view of morality. It could be a more realistic outlook on life and its challenges, or it could be used as a way of dictating one's own life in a manner that facilitates a person's needs without restricting it arbitrarily. As an example, it could be as loose as saying morality is simply allowing yourself the freedoms you desire, so long as those freedoms don't infringe on the freedoms of others. To say morality is the starkest contrast between black and white would be misleading, because at the heart of every conflict between these two colors lies the idea of self versus society, or in other words, what is good for me versus what is good for us. This conflict must be resolved to properly combine these colors, and yet it's not that hard of a task. Once again, we can look to humanity. As much as we call ourselves good people, we will often take the path which benefits us over others, unless that other is a person who is close to us in some way. This does not mean we are evil or selfish for doing so. It just comes down to the attachments we create. In that way, being purely selfless is a rare trait, just as being totally selfish is as well. In that way, we could say the purest middle ground is taking care of those who you care about while being able to disregard the struggles of others. It's a more pragmatic outlook, one that says as long as my friends and family prosper, then that's all I can really ask for. Once again, this would be closest to the center of these opposing ideals. So be sure to play with the ideas closest to each edge, as the experiment will lead you to new ideas. For instance, you could be a selfish person in most cases, putting your needs first, but you help those close to you because if they succeed, then you succeed. On the other hand, you could be a kind soul, but have a realistic outlook. You can't help everyone, but you do try to help those you can, not losing sleep over what you can't do. The intersection between society and morality for White is the idea of law and order, and thus to dictate a healthy society in White's mind, one must enact laws which restrict our more dark human tendencies. On the other side of it, there is Black, who always thinks of self over society and doesn't place morality in its way. It thinks of laws as needless restrictions that deny our desires. So how can these two see eye to eye here? What is the middle ground for better or for worse? On one end, it could be taken as a way to benefit those at the top, a sort of laws for thee and not for me. In this way, it still makes laws which create order, and yet the push to its more Black side allows the combination to benefit from these laws. An all too common notion that this combination holds is that order is important, and yet it should never be used to restrict me or those close to me. Once again, coming back to the idea that what is good for the group I am within is good for me. Of course, this isn't the only reflection of law and order in this combination, of course. Just as we said with morality, what constitutes lawful action can change from place to place and from culture to culture. Perhaps in this way, law is a malleable thing as well. Maybe it's something that shouldn't restrict us, and we should instead police ourselves. Should someone have the right to set rules for us that make no sense? Of course, there are cut and dry instances where order must be maintained, but it should not then cost us our autonomy. Kings cannot pass laws that only make the serf's life hard. Everyone should have the chance to be themselves and pursue their own interests, so long as those interests don't align with the taking of property or life from another without merit. This way relies more on humanity to police itself instead of rigidly written down laws, because culture changes and the laws are always one step behind. Now, as you can see, the intersection between law and independence is a vast one. It can be a chokehold a group has over a community, it can be independent freedom policed by the good parts of humanity, or it could be something else entirely. I could honestly go on about this aspect of this combination for a while, but we should really move on. Part of living and contributing to a society where each person acts for the greater good of the group requires humility, and thus this is a major factor in White's personality. What this means for Black, as its enemy, is of course the opposite approach. Black instead is the color of ambition, and will take any advantage or opportunity it can for itself, and boast about it every step of the way. With this in mind, how can we find that space between these ideas? I like to think of it this way. Ambition without humility will take a person down a path where they shed everything for small gains. trampling on others and inflating their ego past a reasonable point. This can often lead to a person who genuinely believes themselves to be better than everyone else. Toxic outlook, for sure. On the other hand, humility without ambition will have the opposite effect. You'll miss out on many life-changing moments, times where you could have made more for yourself. A person who is humble will find such gains to be inconsequential, but this doesn't mean you should forego the possible pleasures that this short life can bring. Will you look back and be thankful of that simple life? So in my mind, this combination takes a more pragmatic approach to these ideas. They see the purpose that their life holds, and yet they know they are just a person with faults. If we sit completely in the center, this is actually a very balanced outlook. But of course, this isn't always the case. Remember, if we are part of a combination, it doesn't mean we sit perfectly in the middle. It's up to you to find how you can bend towards one side of the color pie or the other. And in that way, you'll be sure to find an interesting ideal that sits between humility and ambition. This topic leads perfectly into the next, and that is the dichotomy between discipline and self-indulgence. Much like humility, White understands that it will take discipline to better oneself and the world around them. What good are laws and the pursuit of peace and order without the discipline to hold it all together? On the flip side, Black discards discipline for the finer things in life. Pure self-indulgence is better suited for Black. Once again, Black asks the opposite. Why restrict oneself when there is so much of life to enjoy? I may be doing harm to myself or others, but if I'm happy and I got what I want out of this life, is that not all I could ask for? Now, a life of pure discipline makes for a good monk, and a life of pure self-indulgence tends to end in self-destruction. So of course, the space in between this is a life of both discipline in the things the individual finds important, or of discipline when it comes to the preservation of self, or those you call kin, all while carving out time for yourself to do the things that you want, to enjoy life and its many pleasures. This topic displays to us that the philosophies we hold close as our own aren't a two-sided coin, one where we either are or aren't something. In the same way, the 5 colors aren't the whole story on their own. White-Black is a combination that must wrestle with ideas such as self and society. Said another way, it's what is good for me versus what is good for us. This combination can express itself in many ways depending on what colors you lean more or less into, or by taking on specific traits from each color and finding an ideology somewhere in the middle. As an example, we can look to the Orzhov Syndicate, who utilize White's influence over society and its focus on piety. Then they apply some of Black's worst traits, such as greed. This is declared on the card Castigate, which reads, "We have no need for military might. We wield 2 of the sharpest swords ever forged. Faith in our left hand, wealth in our right." I like this because it really does show what each of the 2 colors are bringing to the table. On the other hand, we have the Silver Quill of Strixhaven, who utilize Black's need to be center stage and the belief in the power of its own words and expression, which is then paired with White's desires to lift each other up. For this, we can look to the card Silver Quill Initiate. She had spoken the words 100 times, but under the spotlight, in front of everyone, something new emerged, and the crowd went wild. As you can see, White-Black can be very diverse, and it's up to you to find how to best apply the colors present in this combination, and how their opposing philosophies can in fact complement each other. Because after all, life isn't so black and white. Simic is a fascinating color pair, which blends the conflicting energies of blue and green to create something truly special. While the Ravnican Guild, that of Simic, does a good job of showcasing how science and nature can coexist, there is much more to this pair than meets the eye. In Strixhaven, we were given a glimpse into the mathematical side of the color combination, revealing a new perspective on blue and green, and yet we can still go deeper. In this video, I aim to delve into the underlying philosophy of Simic, filling in the gaps to reveal its true essence, by presenting the core conflicts which shape the pair. This act of finding the space where the two colors present can agree through opposing ideas will give us insight into who this pair truly is. So with that, let's open our minds and explore the fundamental conflicts which form the philosophy of blue-green, or Simic. The most personal of conflicts within the combination of Simic, and one that permeates through all of its philosophies, is that of instinct versus learned knowledge, or nature versus nurture. Green as a color believes that it's born into a role and is given the tools it needs to grow into what it was meant to be, while blue states that we are but a blank slate, who, through learning and iteration, can reach its potential. With this in mind, the philosophy of Simic must lie somewhere in between. Simic would then be of the philosophy that yes, we are born into an environment and given specific traits which influence our purpose, but that is only a starting point. From there, we must always aim to transcend a singular purpose and work towards our potential. In fact, Simic would go further still and state that it is our human instinct, or nature, to learn, and that such desires are our evolutionary strength. This philosophy at the heart of Simic is that of taking the basis of nature, of our innate instincts and the environment which shaped us, and then iterating upon it through experience and learning. In the eyes of this pair, nature has given us a starting point, or a base set of tools, and a mission to accomplish. But in order to reach that potential or purpose, we must work towards it through learning and understanding, and of nurturing the gifts that we are given. In many ways, a reliance on only instinct leaves no room for growth, and a mind for only knowledge which rejects our instincts will find itself in a place removed from its true nature. Green may fear that by putting our mind to learning, we may discover answers that take us away from our animal side, from our purpose chosen at birth, and one shaped by our environment. But Simic's blue side states that we must not fear searching for knowledge, as this action will only take us back to the beginning, to the root of who we are, to the root of everything. You see, truth cannot be broken through questioning. It can only be reinforced, if it is indeed truth. In this way, Simic will dig into every bit of knowledge available, ensured that such instincts to do so will only strengthen its position. You see, it is indeed true that much like animals, there is innate knowledge within us, that of underlying mechanisms of the human experience, while at the same time, this knowledge is but a root state of being and must be added to. And through the act of understanding how those inner mechanisms function, we may better reach our potential or our purpose. Neither cancel each other out, and both can exist. This is what Simic respects and what the core of its being is based upon. The conflict of tradition versus that of progress is one that asks, should we rely on the rituals which have worked for so long, or should we always aim to carve a new path and abandon old ways, as they are but shackles upon the future? In many ways, these two seem as though they could not exist together, but the truth is that those same traditions were forged upon an empty path, and that progress without the foundation of tradition will crumble. Simic believes that yes, there is indeed repeatable acts forged through history that have value, but the value of those traditions should never hinder progress. And in that, through progress, new traditions can be formed. It's an outlook which has a greater effect on society, as many societies can stagnate in their traditions, while others are flimsy if they do not respect what has worked before. Think of it like this. A person is born into a system where there is deep-rooted traditions. These traditions then give the individual a starting point, which is based on ideas that have been proven to work. This individual can then aim to bring about a new methodology by leveraging that strong base. A society then built off of this pairing can reach new heights upon each generation, as the next flock will now have a new platform to begin their journey upon. If we only stick to our old ways, we cannot hope for a brighter future. And if we do not appreciate what has worked for our forefathers, we risk making the same mistakes that they did. In some ways, this is an act of both valuing the past as much as the future. Green is a color of acceptance, as its view of the natural world is that it's already perfect, and to cast aside any natural creation would mean doubting nature's intent. Of course, this concept does not extend to the unnatural or perversions of that natural order. This is why it often comes into blows with blue, as blue sees everything around it as merely an initial step into what it could be. What this means is that blue does not see anything as perfect the way it is, and instead aims to bring about perfection out of those things, like a sculptor to a blank lump of clay. As you may know, perfection is an impossible dream, and in this way, this striving for perfection is one of blue's greatest weaknesses, and its strengths. Simic in this way is then of two minds. Yes, nature is perfect, but that does not mean it cannot be helped along. You see, evolution shows us that nature is always working upon itself, even if that pace may be slow, iterating over a millennia upon its creations. An animal only becomes more specialized and efficient over time. So does this mean that green is then striving for perfection? Well, no. Green will accept each stage and will not interfere with it at any point, especially not in the way that blue would. Blue would place a rocket booster on a pig just to see it fly. What this means for Simic is that it will be a pairing who simply pushes nature along, or it will experiment with what is provided within the biology of nature's gifts, but will not pervert those same gifts. Nature is a wonderful engineer, but works far too slowly for my tastes. This flavor text from the card Master Biomancer to me encapsulates this conflict within Simic best. Nature will iterate through evolution, but rarely does it experiment with foreign ideas. This is what blue brings to the table, a mind for experimentation and perfection. Simic then states that nature in all of its glory has left us all the tools we require and has hidden the blueprints among its creations. We need only dig into what is provided to learn what we can, and from there enact perfection. Humanity has always tried to understand the greater unknown forces around us in all of its infinite grandeur. This side of humanity is then reflected by the color blue, a color who cannot sit by and simply witness the many mysteries around them without trying to understand it all, down to its root equation. Now, it's not that green does not lay its eyes upon such infinite beauty and feel nothing. It's just that for green it's a matter of reverence rather than curiosity. Green sees itself as but a small speck among the infinite. This revelation fills the color with calm and awe, while blue is overcome by a restless need to know, to reach out and lay its hands upon the stars, and to map its every molecule. The resolution to the conflict in Simic's mind is actually that it finds the whole argument meaningless. To say that humanity is only a small piece of the universe is foolish, as we are universes in our own right, And to say that we could ever understand everything is an arrogant position on our part. We are in fact an extension of the infinite, while being finite in scope ourselves. To an ant, are we not gods? But to a god, are we not ants? Simic is okay with not knowing, or of its inability to grasp at the universe beyond us, but that doesn't mean it won't try. Through math and physics, we can better understand the universe around us, but at the same time we must realize that even physics breaks apart at a great enough scale. In our own lives, this could mean accepting spiritualism, in that it holds a tie to that which we don't understand, yet experience, but never abandoning science, as it can be used to quantify what we do know. It's okay to live a simple life, but we should never allow our curiosity to die. Said simply, the philosophy of Simic in this regard is that of being a finite part of the infinite, of how even our actions, small as they may be within the greater scheme of all things, is as important as something like the death of a star, for those actions affect the universe within us in ways greater than a distant star ever could. Simic is a color pair who is defined by the conflict of blue and green, colors who hold a fundamentally different outlook on the self, our place, and of how we should interact with the universe around us. This pair shows us that perhaps our assumptions on such topics are more nuanced than we could have previously believed, from topics that start with the self to those that go beyond our understanding. Simic believes that it is a culmination of our environment and our pursuits that make us, that tradition and progress can be utilized in tandem to create a better world. Simic believes that we can work in cooperation with nature to find a new version of perfection, one that recognizes nature as the ultimate authority, yet one we can call partner. For we are a part of nature, and yet the hand that guides us. We are the finite and the infinite. We are nature's children, yet gods in our own right. Of any color pair in Magic the Gathering, none have a worse reputation than Rakdos, destined to play the villain, which is a shame really, because while its traits can lead to debauchery and wickedness, it's actually a lot more nuanced than that. You see, Black-Red or Rakdos is a color pair that simply desires to get the fullest experience when it comes to its own life. And is that so wrong? Is that not what we all strive for in this limited life of ours? In this video, I aim to give you a deeper perspective on Rakdos, and one that just might change your opinion on this color pair. To do so, we will dig into its root philosophy by breaking down the spaces where Black and Red's own philosophies merge to create something new. With that, let us break down the first and core pair of ideals shared between Black and Red to begin understanding the philosophy of Rakdos. The coupling of Black and Red happens on 4 levels, but I believe the core of where these two colors see eye to eye is the idea of experience and self-satisfaction. Red as a color is one who desires to experience life in all of its messy glory. It will follow its whims to their conclusion, as each new avenue is but another facet of what makes life worth living. It is the act of the here and now, the tactile expression of self. On the other side of it, we have Black, a color who aims to get the most out of its life. To Black, life is what you make of it. You must reach out and grab hold of every bit of sweetness it carries and squeeze the very essence from it. If we are destined to die, then should we not take everything from this life that we can? So when these colors are combined, a sort of extreme of these two ideals is formed. It becomes a restless need to act upon our every desire, to go out and make memories, fleeting as they may be. In our own life, this could mean casting aside responsibilities in favor of adventure, fun, or pleasure. Why work to a future that is uncertain when we could simply make the most of the here and now? In many ways, a Rakdos-aligned person's greatest fear is to live a life of conservative caution, and that to lie on one's own deathbed, regretting that they could have done more with their limited time. So then, should we not follow our every desire as it comes in order to forego a life of regret? A Rakdos-aligned person is one to see those who scurry about in their pursuits of societal pressures as nothing more than fools. Many restrict themselves based on such pressures and never get to take life by the horns. We fear too much what others think of us and how we will be perceived when it comes to expressing our impulses and desires, that we willingly lead shallow lives. Ones where our jobs and obligations are more important than getting the most out of our limited lives. Rakdos says then that we should reject what is expected of us and instead live a life we want, and to follow our heart and our desires to their every conclusion. We have discussed what it is about the color pair of black-red that leads its motivations in life, but we have not dug into how this pair has come to this conclusion. This is where the combination of honesty and realism comes into play, a coupling of concepts which lead to a truth of self, an outlook which rejects abstract and arbitrary restrictions and falsehoods. On one side you have red, a color who leads a life that is down the middle, or honest in its actions, in that by following its heart, it leads a life that is purely one's own, one unaffected by doubt. It does not lie to itself or others. What you see is what you get. From feeling to action, there is no blurred lines. On the other hand, you have black, a color that imposes truth on its surroundings and others. It sees the world for what it is, and through this knowledge makes the conscious decision to act in a manner which reflects the real side of humanity. Black sees how we lie to ourselves and play along with what has been defined as who we should be, when in reality these definitions are in stark contrast to how humans actually are. This combination then leads to a philosophy which is honest of action and realistic in outlook. Rakdos understands that while we are creatures of community, we're also selfish beings who see the world through our own lens and experiences, and that this idea of selfishness being a taboo word is further proof of our indoctrination within society. Rakdos believes that most of us end up living a life that is a tepid version of our true selves. We water down who we are to please others, or to not stand out. The idea that we only have one run on this earth, and that we would bow our heads to others in fear of being rejected by society is foolish. It's said that there are three versions of ourselves: the public us, the private us, and the true self, meaning the side that we show to others to gain the approval of society, the side of ourselves we show to people close to us, and the side of ourselves we hide in fear of shame. This idea, to Rakdos, showcases how we manipulate not just ourselves, but those around us, instead of being purely authentic. Rakdos rejects the three selves and aligns only with the true self. And in that way, it may clash with society, but it never regrets its actions or who it is. Rakdos says to you, look deep into who you are and the thoughts that bring you shame, and analyze why that is. Is it that your thoughts or outlook is wrong? Or is that you fear being ridiculed, outcast, or shamed? Are you satisfied living a life where your true self is forced to live in the shadows? Or will you break free and reject what society has defined you to be? Within both red and black lie a true lack of doubt in oneself. For red, it's a feeling of self-assurance, the knowledge that who they are is their true self, in that they do not question their own actions, as they are firm in the belief that every action they take is a pure reflection of who they are, and to stop at any point and doubt themselves is an act of stepping away from their firmly held intent. In a similar but distinct way, black is a color who has the greatest confidence in one's own abilities and qualities. To them, life is defined by their outlook, meaning any wavering in one's own confidence is a lie propagated by doubt. Once again, the combination is that of assurance in one's actions married to a confidence in one's ability and qualities of self. It's both how Rakdos expresses itself outward as well as its view of oneself. This means that Rakdos is the true pair when it comes to a rejection of any form of doubt, when it comes to self, at least. It's a pair that rejects any imposed questions of its methods, thoughts, and expressions of self. While this means it's a pair who can be blind to its faults, it does strengthen its view of who it is and who it wants to be. Oftentimes, we water ourselves down because of that lack of confidence or self-assurance, and that is just not the case with Rakdos. You are who you portray yourself to be, and if you are confident in yourself and who you are, then others will be as well. We in fact allow others to doubt us when we doubt ourselves, and in that way we can be walked upon and made to change our very being. We all too often cower at the feet of expectations, when in fact through confidence and self-assurance, we can define the expectations others have of us. Rakdos then says, hold your head up high and be assured that if you hold each action, thought, and portrayal of self in high regard, then others will too. And if they do not, then cast them aside, for they are not worth deluding yourself for. The philosophy of Rakdos is created as a rejection to the shared enemy of both black and red, white. This then has a profound effect on our next marriage of ideas between the colors present within this pair, and that is the idea of freedom and autonomy. Red as a color values above all else the freedom to act, to be its true self, and to follow its passions unabated, while black is the color who places the utmost importance to total autonomy of both mind and body. It rejects wholeheartedly any restrictions others would place upon it. While both of these needs are similar, they do have some nuances to them. Freedom is rooted in an outward expression of self, while autonomy is based on inward protection of one's own being. Red rejects these shackles upon its feet, which aims to restrict its movement, while black rejects the laws that define who it's supposed to be. When these colors come together to form Rakdos, it becomes the purest form of self-governance and outward action. It is a pair that has an almost violent reaction to being told how it should act, who it should be, or what is allowed of it. Rakdos then states that all must, and that is a hard must, be allowed to follow their whims and desires, and that we should be free to shape our own identity. For me, to even use the word allow wouldn't exactly align with the Rakdos philosophy. It is one based in a total rejection of any stated allowances granted by some outside force, whether that be government, parents, or peers. A person aligned with Black-Red believes in only absolute freedom and absolute autonomy. Furthermore, if we need laws or ancient books to be good people, we were never good people to begin with. So then why do we need these arbitrary restrictions upon ourselves? This can make it difficult to form a society within these ideals, but such is the effect of the most personal pairing in all of the color pie. This society, loose as it would be, is merely a collection of people who share the same concept of self, and who gain something from themselves through the interactions they hold with others. For in the mind of Rakdos, my life is my own to define. Rakdos is a color pair who fits nicely into the idea of debauchery and evil in Magic the Gathering, but in reality, it doesn't have to be. The truth is that black and red are the two most personal of colors, and when they come together, a pair is formed that values the self above all else. The truth is that we all lie to ourselves and work tirelessly to ignore our selfish thoughts, pretending they don't exist, as we have labeled selfishness as a taboo word, when in reality it is rooted in an honest look at oneself. You see, rare is the person who is truly selfless, and common is the one who lies to themselves about what they want from this life. Through the browbeating of society, we're taught to undervalue ourselves, while those who don't reap the rewards of our suffering. Rakdos does not ask that you cast all aside, but rather that you stand up for yourself as the one true being who matters, as life is experienced by our own view of it. And if we spend our limited time fulfilling the needs of others rather than ourselves, then that is the only true regret one can have. Instead, experience all that life has to offer. Be honest with yourself. Value your freedom, and always act with confidence. If you follow these tenets, Rakdos guarantees that you will lead a more fulfilled life. Halt, traveler. You have arrived at the Azorius checkpoint. Before you can proceed any further, I must inquire about your intentions. Are you here to embrace the noble pursuit of self-improvement and the betterment of society? Or do you harbor a desire to incite chaos and disrupt the tranquility we hold dear? Know this, dear citizen, the Azorius will not tolerate the latter, but will steadfastly uphold the former. Now, take a moment to reflect upon your convictions and acknowledge the weight of your choices. Once you have embraced the path of a better world, the gates shall open, granting you access to our most coveted philosophy. With the formalities addressed, you are now ready to uncover the profound essence that lies at the core of White-Blue, or as we call it, Azorius. Brace yourself, for a world of enlightenment awaits you as we unravel the intricate tapestry of our ideals and unveil the secrets that shape our unwavering commitment to order and perfection. Typically in these videos, I compare two similar traits between the colors of a given pair to find where they meet in the middle. But for white and blue, I believe there is one core trait which is shared by both. In this case, the trait is that of the idealist, an innate desire in both colors to reach for a better self, or a better world, a state of order and perfection respectively, and of a utopia for all. When something so final is the goal, then surely it can only be an idealist who deems it possible. For its part, white grasps at an ideal state for the world around them. They strive for absolute peace and order, a noble aim, but one that is void of possibility. What I mean is that such things are an absolute, and nothing about society works in absolutes. That said, it is a noble cause, and something that invigorates the color. On the other side, blue strives for perfection, and as we have already discussed, such notions are impossible by their nature, as perfection is a nigh unreachable dream. Such realizations would typically cause doubt for most colors, but for white-blue, doubt is replaced by an endless hunger to try, a purity of hope that only an idealist could find comforting. It is in fact this ever-shifting goal that motivates blue and white. It drives their discipline and dedication. So yes, white and blue are idealists, and when combined it becomes something even more potent. An Azorius-aligned person is one who reaches for the stars, for that utopia beyond reach. It's something that permeates through everything within this type of personality, and can be seen in their methods, those of which we will come to learn more about. Other colors may call an idealist a fool, but someone aligned with white-blue would turn around and explain that they feel sorry for their lack of vision. This idealist nature is something that courses through every aspect of Azorius, for why work tirelessly towards a goal if it is not one worth achieving? When a person or faction is an idealist through and through, there are ones who strive for a lofty goal beyond the reach of common folk, so no simple methods or accidental procedures will get them there. And thus, it's of the utmost importance to live with discipline and dedication. A person who is aligned with white-blue is one who works tirelessly with an eye to their vision for the future, and their every action and nature reflects this, in that they hone their entire being to achieve this end. It is the stalwart soldier, the tireless scientist, or the steadfast king. The source of this is no wonder when the shared enemy of both white and blue is that of red, a color who acts on its impulses and is frivolous with its life, often directionless and prone to flights of fancy. In contrast, a white-blue aligned person is methodical, strict, and motivated. I would even go so far as to say that if they are doing anything that does not push them towards their utopia, then they can be overcome by a depressive state, as a day wasted is a day taken from them. In that if they or the world around them is not bettered by their actions, then what is the point? This pair of ideals comes from not just a rejection of red though, but is also born from each color brought together to form a hardened self. You see, white provides the pair with discipline, for how can we expect to achieve peace and order without it? On the other side, there is blue, who states, how can perfection be obtained without dedication? This combination means that such a person is rigid in how they live their life. They're of the personality who plans out their days, one who finds work more satisfying than play, and of one who almost revels in hardship. They will rarely carve out much time for fun or relationships with others, outside of those who share their mindset. Though if you do make friends with a white-blue person, you can be confident that they're steadfast and reliable. It's not like they don't enjoy the company of more frivolous friends or joyous occasions. It's just that they always feel the gnawing of what they could be doing to better themselves or the world around them whenever they are not actively working towards that end. They enjoy pushing their body and their mind, of honing themselves for what is to come, as discipline and dedication are like a muscle that weakens when it is not being exercised. In truth, they just wished everyone saw the world like they did, for just think of how the world would be if everyone applied the best of themselves into everything they did. Structure and efficiency lend themselves to both how Azorius acts within its own life and how it wishes for society as a whole to be run. As a pair, it is one who pushes back against uncertainty and wasteful actions. It sees life as better once a plan has been laid, rules have been set, and methods enacted. It is a pair who follows a strict moral code and abides by laws as written to the letter, so long as those laws are well thought out and make the world a better place in some way. It reflects someone or a society that needs direction to be secure in its future. Otherwise, it feels as if it's wandering aimlessly through life, directionless like paper caught in the wind. Instead, it desires to anchor itself and to be an anchor for others, to stand firm against the storm around it, dictating such movements for itself in a manner that takes only the motions required. This need is based in the combination of its colors and a firm rejection of its shared enemy. As you see, white on its own requires structures put in place, as a way to form order around it, while blue is efficient in its actions, weary of wasting its precious time. Thus, efficiency is important. If you find yourself aligning with the color pair of white and blue, you most likely are one who finds anxiety in the uncertain, or a future unknown, of when there is no path forward. Perhaps it feels like the world around you is spinning, and the only way to feel normal is to grab hold of it, set in place the pillars of structure in your life, and follow through on them with confidence. You may need to have a plan or rules in place, and to shed any act which does not play a part in how you wish your life to be, or what you want your future to become. To some, it may seem like you have a cold outlook, but for you, it's all you know. This then lends itself to the environment you foster. Society as it stands should have well thought out rules set in place, and be governed by reason, not emotion. It must be organized and efficient, and run in a manner that fosters the best of its people and values their time. For if we can set up such a state, then we can reach greater heights together than we ever thought possible. Order and perfection are a true representation of absolute being, like the singularity at the center of a black hole, frightening yet beautiful, a place where time stops, matter is compressed to a single point, and a state of still perfection is found. It may seem impossible to grasp, and yet there it lies, beyond comprehension. Now, while this example is rather dramatic, it is a visualization of White-Blue's earnest desire for a version of self and state that is absolute in its design. Of course, this is a dream beyond our reach and can be seen more as a star that guides, and will usually be pared down when talking about the true philosophy of someone White-Blue aligned. What I mean is that the combination of Azorius is one that walks a straight line to a single point, and each action they take moves them ever forward. In this way, absolute order and perfection is the point in the distance which the line is drawn to, a line that starts off with oneself, then moves into their interrelationships, from there to society, then stretching out from there to the world around them, and finally, if all things are complete, can lead far beyond. Where the Azorius-aligned person's place sits along this path is a matter of status and influence. For someone like you and I, it may stop at self and our relationships. For someone in government, it is implemented in society through policy. But if you're someone of great power and magic, it may reach out to the world and into what lies beyond. No matter the case, the Azorius-aligned person is one to constantly work towards this utopia, one they believe is for the benefit of all. For what could be better than total order and perfection, at least in their mind? If something does not take them or the society they're a part of towards this idealized goal, then there is no use in it. It's rigid, sure, but to Azorius there can be no other goal worth achieving. The combination of White-Blue or Azorius embodies the traits of idealism, discipline, dedication, structure, and efficiency. Azorius individuals are driven by an innate desire to reach for a better self and a better world. They believe in the possibility of an ideal state, of absolute peace, order, and perfection, despite the inherent challenges and impossibilities associated with these concepts. Azorius individuals thrive when they have a plan in place, rules to follow, and efficient methods to achieve their goals. Uncertainty and wasted actions are anxiety-inducing for them, prompting a need for order and structure to maintain a sense of normalcy and control. Moreover, Azorius individuals envision a society governed by reason and organized in a manner that values people's time and fosters their best qualities. They believe that by establishing such a structured and efficient society, they can collectively achieve greater heights and reach their shared vision of absolute order and perfection. Ultimately, the pursuit of order and perfection guides their path, fueling the relentless pursuit of an idealized utopia for all. Gather round the fire, vicious clan, for I have something I wish to discuss with you. As those that call yourself Gruul, ones comprised of red-green mana, you've not once stopped to ponder or put into words your philosophy. For such musings are best left to those who lack a connection to the pure state of self that you have achieved. While it's something I do understand, I ask that you not deny your knowledge to those who are curious. This is why, in this video, I've taken it upon myself to explain the philosophy of Gruel through 4 concepts, starting with the core of its beliefs and finally ending on the abstract. With that, let us begin at the heart and soul of Gruel. To understand the philosophy of red-green, or Gruel, we must first expand upon the core traits in which the 2 colors present can find common ground. For Gruel, the driving force behind both its actions and beliefs is the coming together of impulse and instinct. These 2 concepts serve as the impetus behind this pair, and indeed are an underlying factor influencing every living thing. We are already given all the knowledge we need upon our birth, a heart that guides, a gut that knows. The answer to life's riddles ought not be so complex, as every answer to its questions are provided by following our inner guides. And if we break down each side of the pair, you begin to understand where this comes from. You see, red is a color guided by its heart, by its impulses. It is that sudden urge to act upon those fleeting desires, like a bolt of energy telling us where to move and how to act. In the case of green, it provides that instinct to the pair. It's that gut feeling, crafted especially for us, which is built by a combination of our environment, culture, and species. It's innate knowledge passed down by our parents and ancestors. When these 2 come together, we are guided through both action and reaction in a way that is true to who we are. For Gruel, this is the coming together of humanity and nature. It is our human nature. We must contain both sides of what makes us special, our connection to that root state of being. Where these concepts can end up being lost are upon modern humanity. That is, as we are now, we do nothing but aim to place layers of complexity over top of those voices within us, and to doubt those very voices, as we see ourselves above our base human nature, all because we want to fit into civilization's mold for a perfect and tamed world. To that end, a red-green aligned person would tell you to strip away every layer you've placed upon those voices, and to dig deep to find who you truly are. In the case of red-green's application of its core philosophy, we have but one word which can describe it, and that is simplicity. Though this word on its own, without the context I will provide, sounds rather, well, simple, the truth is that this single word means a lot more to Gruel than you think. It is a word which pushes back against the shared enemy of this pair, blue, a color who creates complexity with its worldview, a color who can't stop for 1 second to realize that its efforts do nothing but distract it from the truth in front of them. As I've said, life ought not be so complicated. Everything we are and everything we need has been presented to us, and it is instead our modern view of the world around us and that of ourselves which makes life complex for its own sake. Simplicity to Gruel is simplicity in who we are, what we want from this life, and our effect on the environment around us. The first point is, in truth, explained in its core philosophy, that of instinct and impulse, and that as someone Gruel aligned, you should not be thinking outside of this context. Do you feel something? Yes? Then act on it. Do you know something? Then trust it. There is no need to dig any deeper. The person we need to be is already there within us, and the only introspection required is that of listening to who that person is and removing any barriers to that power of human nature. This aligns with the second point, in that we need not expect more from this life than that which is provided. Things like striving for perfection are only relevant to those who think that life is not perfect the way it is, to those who have not danced in the rain, laid under a tree on a warm summer day, or dove headfirst into the ocean. What more could we want from this life than the delicacies presented to us? To the final point, that of simplicity in our environment, it is meant to say that our environment is perfect the way it is, and to reject this notion is to reject what makes us who we are, as we are the created result of our environment, culture, and shared history. I say once again that this is a rejection of Gruul's enemy, blue, a color who will manipulate, transform, and otherwise break the beauty of what lies around it. This is why Gruul on some planes can be a force of destruction when it comes to the cities that stifle the land, because such cities are nothing but a devastation of the very environment that gave birth to us. You see, one's heart cannot be heard among the bustle of civilized expectations, and our instincts are dulled upon the falsehoods of comfort. So yes, Gruul believes in simplicity through and through, a notion that is grander than one might think, as it takes strength and passion to live in such a way. One of my favorite quotes by a philosopher named Jean-Jacques Rousseau is this: "Man was born free, but he is everywhere in chains." A quote that is simple in design, but reflects how Gruul sees the world around it. Once upon a time, we were wild and free, and yet now we face the chains of our own design. To Gruul, we must reject these chains and bring ourselves closer to that original state. This is built upon both colors present. As you see, red desires true freedom, unrestricted, as each restriction that is placed upon us is a shackle which pins down one's true self, a self that desires to act upon one's own emotions, passions, and impulses. In the case of green, it believes that we are meant to be wild, to express the version of ourself which nature has defined. And you see, nature does not create such barriers as those we see in a so-called civilized world. It is limitless and wild. This idea is then further contrasted against their shared enemy blue, who is refined and methodical. Each of these facets come together to shape Gruul, who is then a color pair who values a life that has no barriers to its actions, and one that heeds the call of the wild and not that of civilization. Of course, if you yourself are Gruul, then you must be acutely aware of the aching in one's own soul for a life outside of which humanity has defined. You wish to escape, to find your place among the woods, the seas, or the desert, to strip away the shackles placed upon you, and dance in the moonlight. It is deep within anyone aligned with these colors, not because you're bored with your life, but because it's part of who you are. And yet, to fit into this society, we have lost the parts of ourselves that are wild and free. Just as the forest continues to recede by human hands, so too has our connection to it. Now, this does not mean that Gruul cannot form its own society. No, in fact, such things as tribes and clans are in fact conducive to a Gruul society. Small groups, tightly knit with a connection to the lands and traditions which hold expression in high regard, are best suited for a red-green society. Such communities allow each member to be who they were meant to be, all while holding on to the importance of camaraderie and a shared history. For we are still animals who desire a pack. It's just that if this pack were too large, then greater restrictions would be put in place to hold it together. And no group is worth the toll of losing one's own freedom. There are primal forces which predate the very fabric of reality itself, and instinct and impulse are like faint echoes of this power that once surged freely throughout our own plane and all the planes of the vast multiverse. These forces mirror the bubbling magma beneath our feet, ceaselessly seeking an outlet to burst forth in a symphony of violent majesty, akin to the soul of the earth or the heartbeat of a plane. They manifest as expressions of great storms or swirling eddies of mana, shaping the very essence of our cosmos. Those aligned with Gruul are attuned to these primordial energies. They feel the pulsating current coursing through their veins, and they sense it building in the core of their hearts. Their souls seem to resonate with the dance of these forces, attuned to the ancient rhythms whispered by the cosmos. The restless nature of those aligned with red-green arises from the recognition that they are mere conduits, channels through which this primal energy flows. They become vessels of a grander cosmic symphony, resonating with the universe's deepest secrets. To those who follow red-green, the communion with these forces is visceral, almost tangible. It echoes in their joyous dances, reverberates in the melodies of their songs, and erupts in the fervor of their battles. In moments of extreme expression, when they embrace the full extent of their passions and emotions, they transcend the boundaries of the mundane and tap into that underlying power that weaves through all things. This primal link imbues them with a profound sense of purpose, as they comprehend that they are an integral part of a larger cosmic dance. They are not merely spectators, but active participants, intricately woven into the fabric of reality. To embrace the essence of red-green alignment is to embark on a profound journey, one that uncovers the pulsating heart of the cosmos and offers a glimpse into the primordial source of all creation. In the impulses and instincts which act as guides, those aligned with red-green have a distinct confidence in who they are. Because of this, they may live simple lives, one unfettered by doubt, as they can sense the connection they hold to the very essence of everything. Through this expression, they're able to live wild and free, to reject arbitrary complexity brought on by a system that is afraid of its human nature. Now that you have learned all that Gruul has to teach, do you hear those primal voices calling to you? And if so, will you heed their call? In Magic the Gathering, white-red, or Boros, is a color pairing most often depicted as soldiers, leaders, and heroes. These portrayals are honestly something we take for granted, as it simply just feels right. I know this because, well, that's the feeling I got when I was poring over each card and writing this video. Before a single word could be put to paper, a question had to be answered. Why is it that the designers lean so heavily on these themes? Sure, there are variations, but as far as two color combinations go, this one has really settled into a main cast of characters. As it turns out, the answers were right in front of me, and in this video we will break down exactly what those reasons are. To do so, we must inspect the four core conflicts between the colors present, that of white and red. Colors whose ideologies are antagonistic to one another, in some cases at a fundamental level, as you will come to understand as we discuss our first conflict, that of stability versus restlessness. At the heart of this combination lies a single conflict of feeling that cannot be ignored, one that defines an intangible set of personality traits that may apply to you if these colors resonate with your own experience, and will give us a basis to build larger concepts upon. You see, at its core, white is a color who desires order, which is bred from a need for stability. White searches for ways to bring structure into its life, and each aspect of the conflicts we will discuss are its way of achieving this. While for red, its impulsive and sometimes chaotic life is a product of the restless nature inherent to it. Red is a color that can't sit still and is always pushed and pulled along by its heart. And even though this might seem to some as an act of turmoil, it's instead something red leans into fully. So how then could these concepts come together? You would be correct to assume that this may be an uncomfortable state, and yet it doesn't have to be. They can coexist. Just because someone is a restless soul does not mean they do not desire to still have some structure in their life. And on the flip side, structure for its own sake can be stagnation. If we pare this conflict down even further, we begin to see what's at the heart of this conflict. Stability is based in a desire for safety, and restlessness comes from a need for stimulation. In that way, a white-red personality wants to feel safe so that it can pursue stimuli. Perhaps this restlessness and desire for stability comes from an anxious side to the pair. Not only are they people of action, they're also those who are hyper aware of what lies beyond the walls. It's a delicate dance between feeling safe while allowing for motion. Perhaps then this is why they fight so fiercely for the society they have built. It's a need to set up the structures of community for itself and those it holds dear, paired with a desire to proactively take it upon themselves to make it happen and keep it safe. They cannot simply build that wall and sit behind it. They must instead don their armor, hold up their swords, and cross the gates to focus that relentlessness into action rather than reaction. It's something that's true in our own lives. Safety for its own sake will leave us feeling empty, but restlessness without any structure is nothing but listless feeling, and will also leave us feeling empty. In a way, red and white, when combined, recognize this aspect of its humanity and wish to achieve both, at least in some measure or another. When we talk about things like stability and restlessness, we're speaking to feelings that are fundamental. For this conflict, that of discipline versus passion, we are then witnessing the methods which allow these colors to express those feelings. Once again, we have two concepts which seem antagonistic, while it's this conflict which breeds a philosophy we see represented most in Magic the Gathering, and answers the question I posited above, that of why these themes are so reoccurring, those of the zealot soldier, the inspiring captain, or the raucous hero. A form of character who is disciplined in how it carries itself, and that it maintains a control over its actions guided by purpose, all while overflowing with a passion for that cause. It's the resolute or disciplined mind provided by white that allows such passion to have meaning outside of its own self-revelrous satisfaction. In this way, red is tempered by the forge of discipline and made into something new. But do not be mistaken, it's not just white carrying this pair, as the underlying passion is a requirement to craft such characters. Those who inspire others with their overflow of enthusiasm, which sometimes skirts raw discipline. As discipline without passion is blind obedience, and in the mind of a white-red personality, such obedience is for dogs, not heroes. In this way, the white-red aligned person is one that is devoted to a cause, nation, or people, and places all of its being into it. You see, passion, when set to task and focused, is like that of an explosive force, honed to a single goal. While discipline emboldened by passion is at the heart of inspiration. In this way, the white-red character is one who lifts others up through its grander actions and more subtle states of being. It's the character whose tales are told of, and whose example ignites a fire in the belly of others. I also believe this is where white-red's patriotism comes from, though it is not simply patriotism built on a blind loyalty for a flag, rather a love for a nation and its people, one which sparks strong feelings when it comes to upholding that nation's way of life. It's a form of passion that is rooted in a strong love for a society that is built by their pairing. It's something that is felt strongly for both sides within white-red, and is why we see so many soldiers in this pair rather than knights. While knights are bound by duty, soldiers are bound by patriotism. While the conflicts we have discussed so far are held at a personal level, the natural progression must then be to look at how the colors present are reflected by society. In this case, our conflicts then become governance versus freedom. White is a color that believes there must be structures put in place, otherwise people will fall to chaos, while red states that we must be free to pursue our impulses, as order stifles our pure selves. The truth is, this balance is the sort of negotiation we make in the free world already. We accept governance to protect and provide stability, which allows us to express our individuality. Sure, this may sound contradictory, but the truth is that enemy pairs are a combination of what may seem like contradictions, but are rather concessions which allow for a new philosophy to flourish. In the mind of White-Red, pure governance is fascism, and pure freedom is anarchy. So in that way, it accepts that rules and leadership must be put in place while still asserting that freedom should never be stripped away. Of course, like all things, this is a struggle that is ever fought between white and red, even in a society built from their pairing. The result of such a combination is a level of democracy that, if negotiated with both ideals in mind, results in everyone getting what they need from said society. Though even with this set in place within a community of white-red, there is often citizens who fall under two different camps. Those who are emboldened to protect the freedoms of its people, leading to those who are rebellious and outspoken, while on the other side it will result in those who are militaristic and conservative, of people who wish to protect their way of life. Neither can be removed, and both are required to exist within a white-red society. That way it doesn't slip fully into one ideal or the other. This system of counterweights allow for both governance and freedom to exist together. And while these counterweights exist, the truth is that most of this society will fall somewhere in the middle, accepting that governance and freedom must exist in equal measure. So far, we have traveled from the personal to the societal, but I want to take you along as we discuss the big picture in regards to the philosophies and themes of each color present. In this case, the conflicting concepts are that of order versus chaos. The goal being the discovery of that space where these ideals can meet, in some form of cooperation or understanding. You see, when it comes down to it and everything is stripped away, white is a color whose aspirations are to bring order to a chaotic world, while red forms that chaos as a rejection to forcing order onto what not need be controlled. In many ways, chaos and order are a result of what we've discussed, not a source. Red does not aim to be chaotic, it's just that its core themes and philosophies lead to a sort of chaos of being. The same can be said about white. Sure, it does strive for order, but order is the result of a desire for structure. In the end, neither concept on its own is healthy in the mind of this combination, as a life marred by chaos is always on the back foot, while true order will remove any form of passion. What this means is that there must be a flexibility between the two, or that both must exist at the same time. The white-red personality appreciates that there is chaos in everything, and that there is order in that chaos as well, given enough scale, time, or perspective. In reality, both do exist at the same time, from space itself to society, and even further still at a minute level. If we took a microscope and peered down to the smallest atom, its composition would seem chaotic to us. And yet, as we zoom out, it begins to take on a form we recognize. Further still, that form becomes ordered and takes shape as one unified structure. It's as if within order, chaos is always present. And to the white-red personality, this is more than an abstract idea. It's something we must always be cognizant of. In this way, a person may pursue passion that seems chaotic within the greater structures of the society it has built. And this state of being on the part of the individual does not invalidate the order that's built around it. What this means is that actions which seem chaotic but are fulfilling are just as valid as actions taken to bring stability to chaos. Both exist in equal parts, and to deny this is to deny a fundamental aspect of not just humanity, but the foundational building blocks of everything. It's never about some perfect equilibrium between two abstract ideas, but rather a coexistence of conflicting concepts that are both ever present. In Magic the Gathering, white-red or Boros is a combination mostly represented by soldiers, leaders, and heroes. And as we've come to learn, there is a reason behind this. Ideals such as discipline and passion do indeed forge characters who lead by example and put themselves on the line for others or a cause they believe in. They are characters who understand the precarious balance between governance and freedom, and on a personal level deeply feel the tug of such conflicts as stability and restlessness, forms of being based in a desire for both stimulation and safety. It's a dance you play over and over again as you move in and out of such states. Above all of these concepts is the basis for the most fundamental of building blocks, that of order and chaos, states ever present in not just the decisions we make, but that of the universe that makes up our being. So if you find yourself dancing between these two states, then perhaps you, my friend, are white-red. What stirs your very core? What drives your existence? Are you guided by unyielding determination, always pushing the boundaries of your potential? Or have you surrendered to the seductive embrace of complacency? If you desire anything from this life other than the simplicity at offer, you must put all of yourself into everything you are and everything you do, always building off of what came before. Such is the philosophy of Dimir. If you find any familiarity in these whispers, then perhaps you align with these colors. Yet, if you remain an observer on the outside, allow me to unveil how the combination of blue-black perceives the world. With that, follow me as I lead you down the path to uncovering the core of what defines the combination of blue-black. Within each of us lies the seed of potential, a seed that sits dormant unless it is watered with ambition. For many people, this potential is never realized, but for those aligned with blue-black, it is the driving force behind their identity. For if one does not reach for the very dizzying heights of who they could be, then such a life is a wasted one. But potential without the ambition to grab hold of it is nothing more than an idealized state of being. We must put everything we have into bettering ourselves, so that such potential is not just a dream, but is instead our handcrafted reality, one of potential built by ambition, a mindset that is unavoidable in the case of Dimir if we consider the colors present that make it up. For you see, blue is a color whose gaze is fixed upon the stars, in that it sees potential in all things, of how through molding and iteration anything can become a better version of what it once was. In the case of its partner black, you have a color who holds ambition to be the key to getting the most out of this life. For if we do not have the drive to make this life what we wish it to be, then there's no reason to go on living. When these colors come together, there is an insatiable thirst for constant improvement of knowledge, capabilities, influence, and power, as through each of these improvements, greater heights can be obtained. Dimir looks at life as a game to be figured out, manipulated, and won, rejecting wholeheartedly their shared enemy green, who spouts such nonsense as the virtues of accepting one's place, of toiling away at what you were born to be. What good are virtues when one must toil away in the mud when they could instead be a king? Dimir tells you to then reject any birthright and instead look to the image of the person you wish to be, someone strong, handsome, intelligent, and with the power to make things happen. Not to just sit around and have life happen to you. It is a weak mindset to leave your life in the hands of someone or something else, when you could very well hoist yourself out of the mud and set your fate. Dream big, never be satisfied, and always look to your potential. If you allow your ambitions to be your inner voice, then such potential can be achieved. Logic and practicality is what gives Dimir the confidence in its outlook. It does not mask its intentions in an idealized way of thinking, but rather sees the world for what it is, and thus knows it must act in the methods that best suit it. There are no saviors coming, there will be no guide, only you and what you can achieve. This also allows it freedom from pity or compassion for the undeserving, just as it expects no pity for itself. For its part of their pair, Black states that it is a dog-eat-dog world, and once we can recognize that, we can remove any expectations we have of others, and instead only see what can be done on the road to what we want. With this outlook, we can take a practical approach, one that throws out any man-made convention in favor of those which provide results. On the other side, Blue sees life as a calculation to be solved, a simple matter of cause and effect. There is no greater force of feeling needed. It is merely an inputting of X to Y in order to receive Z. Nothing more. This part of Demir's philosophy leads to the cultivation of self-reliance, amorality, and pure logical thinking. By removing any outside factors and only seeing life for what it is and how it can be played, you open yourself up to the many possibilities afforded to the few who share your outlook. Some may tell you that you are shedding your humanity in doing so, relegating your outlook to the same algorithm as a computer. But to that you say, I am human. I have accepted what I am and what the world I was born into is. It is you whose mind is clouded, whose outlook is stained by rose-colored glasses. As you see, Dimir desires to control its life fully, and to allow such frivolous things to interfere would only hinder the journey to the potential they have for themselves. How, you may ask, does a society crop up with such colors as its focus? How can structure be formed when each person is looking for their own potential, when things like ambition are treated as a golden trait? To that I ask you to simply look around. Who do you see running your world, guiding your countries, and managing your states? Who holds the wealth and who holds the power? It is not those with compassion in their hearts, or those who wish to lift others up. No, the world is already controlled by those who only look to satiate their own ambitions. So what then can we learn about Dimir society? Well, let me lay it out for you. If we know that our potential should be our guide, and ambition our tool to achieve it, then we must trust that those who have reached that potential should lead those who have not. If we accept that logic and practicality are the method to understanding the world, then we should allow it to structure our society. In this way, we create such hierarchies through the application of this philosophy, as those in power must be deserving of their position, for they have reached such heights by being the most shrewd, intelligent, and driven among us. Though this does not mean they can rest easy upon their throne, as those in power must do everything they can to keep it in order to validate their existence. For if they prove themselves to be too weak or incapable, then they do not deserve their position. Of course, this will skew the balance of power in favor of the few, while the many must abide by that power, unless they themselves wish to take it. This is not cruelty, it is reality. Dimir simply states how things are, not how they should be. Blue-Black would call such society the rule of the deserving. It is a vision of a society that has reached its own potential through the cultivating of elite members of that society. It is by the same values that Dimir holds for itself that it demands for the state it belongs to. For this last part, I want to do a bit of a thought experiment. Think for a moment what the result would be if we were to unleash the unrestrained growth of Blue-Black's potential. The question inevitably arises, what heights could they ascend to? Could there exist a final state, a lofty, ambitious end goal that beckons them forward? To this, it seems logical to assume that such an ultimate destination must exist. For this hypothetical pinnacle, I have chosen the term the absolute. If we can accept this as truth, then let's delve into the realm of speculation and glimpse what the Dimir combination might envision as the ultimate culmination of their shared attributes. Consider for a moment the idea of a being that commands not only complete control, knowledge, and power, but also an unparalleled level of influence. This is what we refer to as the absolute, an embodiment of perfection. Think of a being that harmonizes Black's unquenchable thirst for power with blue's insatiable hunger for knowledge. For black's part, it is omnipotence, and for blue, it is omniscience. This fusion results in an entity brimming with both absolute power and boundless knowledge. Such a being could effortlessly navigate the enigmatic expanse of the blind eternities, effortlessly transmuting their visions into reality. Yet, we must entertain a notion, even this zenith, as extraordinary as it is, might not be the final destination. Could their ambitions, their ceaseless yearning for progress and potential, drive them to push the boundaries even further? This contemplation raises the question of whether their thirst for growth could ever find satiation. In essence, their narrative becomes an unending saga of ambition, a testament to their perpetual quest for knowledge, power, and influence. Within the depths of each individual resides the dormant seed of potential, awaiting the nourishment of ambition to awaken its latent energy. While many may never see their potential realized, those aligned with blue-black find this potential to be the very essence propelling their identity. For to forego the ascent towards one's potential would render their life meaningless. Blue, with its gaze cast upon the stars, perceives potential in all facets of existence, envisioning the alchemical transformation of the ordinary into the extraordinary. As its partner, black provides unrelenting ambition, which guides them to seize life with purpose, extracting the utmost from every moment. When these colors combine, an insatiable thirst for perpetual achievement arises, a hunger to refine the self, augment influence, and wield power. Dimir approaches life as a strategic game, one to be deciphered, manipulated, and ultimately won. Dimir's credo urges the rejection of preordained destinies and instead encourages individuals to envision the selves they aspire to become. Strong, intelligent, commanding, the architects of their own fates, not passive recipients of circumstance. Dimir's philosophy finds its grounding in the realms of logic and pragmatism, shedding the veneer of idealism for a stark understanding of reality. Dimir's societal structure emerges as a natural outcome of its guiding principles. With potential as the North Star and ambition as the driving force, hierarchies are forged through the crucible of mediocrity. Those who ascend to positions of power and influence are not bound by conventions, but are chosen by their capability and cunning. This alignment culminates in a thought experiment contemplating the unbridled growth of blue-black's potential, a concept encapsulated in the term absolute. This vision is that of an entity embodying absolute control, power, knowledge, and influence. In the end, the philosophy of Dimir is a reminder of humanity's ceaseless drive to reach for the stars, to seek the pinnacle that forever eludes our grasp, an unending symphony that resonates within our collective spirit. The Selesnyan philosophy is one rooted in the cultivated merger of nature and civilization, a growth of ideals and concepts based in a common ground between its two colors, white and green, colors who hold similar yet unique perspectives. This new philosophy, born from their pairing, is one with its sights on a better world for all through unification and harmony, an admirable quality that sets them apart from other pairs. And in learning about the Selesnyan way of thinking, there's the distinct chance you may learn more about not just the characters in Magic the Gathering, but yourself and your view of the world around you as well. Let us get our hands dirty by starting with the core of white and green's shared ideals. Like any form of growth, you must always start with the seed. And the seed for the philosophy of white-green is one based in the core beliefs of selflessness and acceptance. For without these fundamental traits, not even the simplest flower may bloom, nor can a forest grow to envelop the world. To start, you must look inward into yourself and how you view others, as without a desire for interconnection, we cannot make this future a reality. So what then does it mean in the mind of Selesnya to be selfless and accepting? As a pair built upon the aversion to the traits of their combined enemy Black, Selesnya is the pair most concerned with its place among a whole, rather than the selfish desires that lead one to see those around them as nothing more than opposition. Black will tell you there is strength in independence, but the truth is that it takes strength to care for others as you care for yourself. All too often we divide ourselves into the smallest groups possible, aiming to create collections of sameness. But to white-green, there is no difference so great that one should not be accepted. To achieve this mindset of selfless acceptance, one must consciously distance themselves from their ego-driven perceptions of others. This path calls for a shift in perspective, a departure from the relentless pursuit of personal gain and validation. Instead, it invites us to embrace a more expansive and compassionate outlook on life. The white-green way urges us to let go of the need to constantly assert our individuality and desires above all else. In this pursuit, each person begins to recognize the interconnectedness of all beings and the world around them. They start to appreciate that their happiness is intrinsically linked to the well-being of others and the harmony of the broader community. This shift from a self-based outlook to one that is broader is at the core of selfless acceptance. It's acknowledging that true fulfillment often arises from contributing to the greater good. To cultivate this mindset, individuals may explore various practices, such as mindfulness, meditation, and philosophical reflection. These tools can help them gradually detach from the self-centered patterns of thought and behavior, ones that hinder selfless acceptance, paving the way for a more harmonious and interconnected existence. If selfless acceptance is the seed, then unity and harmony is the flower that blooms from the dirt. For selflessness forms bonds of unity, and acceptance breeds harmony. It is the act of standing shoulder to shoulder with those you have formed bonds with to create a cohesive unit. As alone, we're like fragile leaves, easily carried away by the winds of life's challenges and uncertainties. But together, we are like a sturdy tree, deeply rooted in the collective strength of our shared humanity. This is where the true beauty of unity and harmony thrives. Such a way of life is the product of each color coming together, taking examples from humanity's best traits and that of nature. For its part, white forges unity, an ideal based on its belief that a strong society is one where each piece works for the greater whole. On the other hand, green cultivates harmony as a result of its holistic take on the universe, a place where everything is and acts as it should. This intertwining of ideals indelibly results in a dance of equity, as each person's strengths shores up the weaknesses of others, nurtured by the delicate balance found in nature's examples. It's the act of counterbalancing one another, of each person falling neatly into place, and thus a stronger unit is formed, all of which contrasts perfectly against Black, who sees no weakness in themselves, nor has the desire to shore up the shortcomings of others. This is not the way in which a white-green aligned person will behave, for when they are pulled up by one hand, they will extend their own. It is living in unison with all things, in the provisioning of a bounty shared. Across every plane of the multiverse, there is enough for all of us, so why not look to your neighbor as a friend, for then we could feasibly lead lives without strife. If selfless acceptance is the seed, and united harmony the flowers which make up the garden, then law and tradition is the guidebook for maintaining and cultivating that very garden. It's what solidifies our bonds, prevents any one flower from sapping the strength from the others, and forges a united barrier made up of common ideals. It codifies our common goals and imprints a shared history. With so much diversity making up a white-green society, there must be methods for keeping it all together. Some share duty to one another. This comes in two forms, that of law and tradition, for it is imperative to establish methods for harmonious coexistence and shared responsibilities. The need for laws is produced from the white side of this pair. It is the code of conduct that is agreed upon, which maintains order, even as a society continues to evolve and expand. On the other hand, traditions emanate from the green side of this pair, serving as the nutritious roots of unity. These traditions bind the community through a shared history that unfolds through the passage of customs and beliefs. In a society teeming with diversity, these traditions act as the glue that bind us together, crafting a profound sense of togetherness through collective actions. These two concepts function in concert, as together they cultivate a shared identity while simultaneously allowing for the purification of the community by expelling those who do not align with the collective vision. For no punishment is worse than to be removed from such a society as this. The nature of these laws and traditions can be as diverse as the myriad of civilizations within the multiverse. They must reflect the unique qualities of each world, its people, climate, and core values, woven together in a way that resonates with every member within the Silesian society. Just as laws and traditions are a form of unification under a set of actions and requirements, piety and spirituality forms connections through a shared belief system. This way of viewing the world and one's place within it is usually present in one form or another, but can be as abstract or as literal as it needs to be for any given group. It could take the form of a rigid religious doctrine, an agnostic understanding of a higher power, a spiritual guiding light, or a cultivation of oneness with the universe. To define one single classification would be foolish, as any given civilization may incorporate what holds the most relevance to a given plane or people. Such a natural disposition for religion or spirituality is an inevitable outcome of the colors who comprise this pair, and further enhances a sense of unification based on the beliefs of some greater power outside of one's own self. White is no stranger to religion or forms of piety, for in a multiverse which does contain gods, angels, and beings of immense power, such beliefs have concrete standing. Broken down further, this piety stems from White's need to look upon higher beings for moral guidance, whether that be kings, gods, or angels. It naturally believes that there are those who exemplify their values and are a beacon of virtue, leading to religions that form doctrines from their examples. Green, on the other hand, is a color who sees that the universe is an entity within itself, and green is merely a part of the whims of that vast universe. Whether this is the literal mass that makes up all things, or the complex energies and unimaginable forces surrounding us, guiding us. Green will often tap into this greater force through spiritualism and ritual, hoping to glimpse the truth that holds everything together. When these colors are combined, religions are formed that balance both sides of the aisle, guiding individuals on a path to mindfulness and meditation, which cultivates a mindset that values the well-being of all, promoting harmony and balance in the universe. Examples that come to mind are those of paganism or Buddhism, though these are but simple parallels only drawn to showcase potential inspirations. A white-green belief system, when broken down to its simplest terms, is that feeling you get when you look up to the sky and feel as if you are but a small piece of something far greater. In the vibrant gardens of white-green philosophy, selfless acceptance serves as the nurturing seed, while unity and harmony bloom as its resplendent flowers. This philosophy, deeply rooted in the rejection of Black self-serving individualism, calls for a shift in perspective, encouraging individuals to transcend the ego and embrace the interconnectedness of all beings. Law and tradition act as the guidebook for maintaining this thriving garden of unity. Laws uphold order and expectations within the community, while traditions weave a shared history through collective actions. Piety and spirituality arise from the inherent qualities of white and green, and foster a sense of connection through shared belief systems, whether in the form of rigid religious doctrine or a deep spiritual connection with the universe. In essence, the philosophy of white-green embodies an understanding that we are all interconnected threads in the tapestry of existence. It encourages individuals to tap into these forces, cultivating a sense of oneness and openness with one another. Through selfless acceptance, unity, and the guiding principles of law, tradition, piety, and spirituality, the end goal is prosperity for all.